I don't need to be understood. I want to be understood, but I don't need to be understood because the one who knows me, who loves me, who gets every part of me, as deep as it is our Lord. And that's all I really need.
Welcome to Matters of Soul Importance, where we dive deeply into topics of both earthly and eternal consequence. I'm Roxanne Solonen, faith columnist and features writer for the Forum, author and speaker. This morning, I am excited to talk with Rose Sweet, a certified life coach and published author who, for over 30 years, has been a nationally recognized expert in Catholic pastoral care. Rose has worn the hats of being single, married, divorced, as well as a wife, mom, stepmom, published author, ministry leader, keynote speaker, commercial business owner, and more. Through life's challenges she's faced, overcome, and understand many of life's hardships. A faithful Catholic, Rose has also had a lifetime membership in the Catholic Society of Evangelists and is an affiliate member of the Catholic Psychotherapy Association. Notably, for our purposes today, Rose is a certified temperament trainer. I'll be honest, I'm one of those people who's always loved personality tests and trying to better understand myself and those around me through them. I have found these assessments empowering, enlightening, and profoundly important in moving about in the world with other fellow sinners. Have you ever misread someone only to discover something about their innate personality that helped you approach them with greater clarity and charity? Learning about who we are and how God made us and how to make the most of our best qualities while understanding our worst can change so much about our social interactions and, as it turns out, potentially affect our holiness. While I'd never put it in those terms before, it makes sense, and I'm grateful now to have a way to really delve into the four main temperament types, first proposed by Hippocrates around 350 BC, and later refined by others in the field of psychology, for the purpose of becoming more compassionate and understanding of those with whom I interact regularly, as well as myself. What's the difference between personality and temperament? Do some temperaments meld better than others? Can someone both be an extrovert and an introvert? Rose has the skinny on all this and more, so let's move into the heart of it. Well, welcome, Rose, to Matters of Soul Importance. I am so honored to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm happy to be here. I love meeting and speaking with other Catholic authors and workers out in the vineyard. It's just fun to get together like this.
It is. A lot of us are busy, and sometimes it's just nice to stop and have a conversation, which I just love that. Now, I have to ask, are you in California? I know you're from there, but I don't know where you are now.
I'm in Southern California, out in the desert, where it gets to be like 120 degrees in the summer, and there's cactus and roadrunners and all that. It's very unique, but very beautiful.
It's good to have a kind of a visual of where you're stationed right now. Much different than what we're experiencing here in North Dakota. Right now, it's pretty mild. We're kind of the end of the summer, it's like in the 80s. It's going to be 70s pretty soon and then drop off. So it's always so interesting to like know about other parts of the country and how people live. But well, today I want to highlight your new book, which is so good. It's called My Type of Holiness: Striving for Sainthood with the Temperament God Gave Me. And I was reading it in this last week, and I finally finished it last night. I was at adoration. I had one chapter to go, and I wanted to save that one last chapter to sit before our Lord and really ponder what the gift of it. I'm one of those people, I love personality tests, but your approach really drew me in. I read that very last chapter where you noted like there's so many different personality tests out there, and some are kind of dangerous, and we kind of need to sort through. But I noticed just even and reading through it and processing it and talking with my family about it, I really did like this one more than others. I feel like it was simplified, and we'll get more into it. But I was really drawn in. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to share with others. So, and I want to thank you, Rose, for plugging our book, What Would Monica Do, that I wrote with Patty Armstrong a couple years ago too. That was gracious of you. And so now I'm happy to plug your book as well.
Your book was wonderful, and the title just drew me in, and you guys did a beautiful job with that. So I'm so happy to have been part of endorsing that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, as I was saying, I appreciate your approach. And I think one of the things I loved about it is that the whole direction of the book and the assessment is our ascent to holiness, which we're talking about matters of soul importance here. So that means a lot. And then also you do plug in the lives of saints, which I found fascinating, because most of these saints are people that, as Catholics, we know who they are and a little bit about them, and even non-Catholics. Right. But to like ponder what their temperament might be is just, it's so interesting. So we're going to ask the question today: can our temperament affect our holiness? Going off of your book, but before we go further, can you share a little bit about yourself? Maybe just skim your faith background a little bit so we can get to know who you are, and then finally, what led you to write this book?
Well, I'm a cradle Catholic, and but when I became a young adult, I went off and was doing my own thing. And some of my siblings left the Catholic Church. They weren't very well catechized, and they said, "Oh, the Catholic Church is the whore of Babylon, and you're going to hell." And I'm like, "What?" So I started to do a deep dive into my faith, and that's how I really like a revert. It's not that I ever left the church, but I just love our faith, and now I can defend it. And there's so much more to discover. But I was in Catholic, all girls Catholic high school, and we studied the 4 classic temperaments in our humanities class. And I found it fascinating. But I do remember when I took the test that I also felt great humiliation and shame, because there was a personality that I wanted to be, and I tested the test showed me my weaknesses. And I'd never done an interior look like that before. You make your little examination of conscience, and, I hit my sister or whatever, but to go deep and to say, who am I and what makes me tick and what are my strengths and weaknesses? I loved it and I hated it at the same time. But I stayed fascinated over the years. And then when I was, in my 20s or something, I was at a jazzercise class, and these ladies were passing around this message by this Christian author. And she had discovered the temperaments, and she was talking about it, and she was hilarious, and she made it real interesting and real simple. And I go, oh, I remember that. This is awesome. So I learned more about it. I actually met her. I hunted her down and had her mentor me. And then for many years, we co-authored books together. We shared the stage together. She passed a few years ago, but she really launched me back into the temperaments. And then as I'm growing then in my Catholic faith, I start learning how to weave our Catholic principles and worldview into this beautiful and ancient study of the temperaments. And I've been teaching the temperaments for 30 years now, so it's great. I love it.
I love it too. I every year I go to a young author conference, and I'm one of the presenters, and I'm thinking I might use this in your book for my presentation this year.
Yes.
Yeah, it's grades like it's 5th through 8th grade, I think. And I thought that would be interesting to talk about like character development, right? And how we can use temperaments to shape character. So you've given me a great idea, and I'm probably going to use that. I'm excited to share.
Well, let me just add that, when I got on fire with it, I turned, of course, being a natural teacher and a leader, you turn around and anybody that is an audience, you start teaching it.
Yeah.
The kids love this. Kids, even 5 or 6 years old, if you explain it to them on their level, they can look around and see, oh, Uncle Fred, he's real choleric, isn't he? And then we laugh and go, oh, yes, he is. And so it's really wonderful, and so kids learn what God naturally gifted them with, and they don't have to feel shame or embarrassment that they're not like their sibling or their friend who's made a different way.
I have to share something else too. So I am, like you, I guess, a natural leader teacher, and now I'm already excited to share it with someone. And
Right,
I'm writing a book with two other authors, and one of, so I'm trying to like pin them down now because I mean, when you're working with people, it's kind of good to know like, oh, that's why they responded that way, And so I just reached out to one of them, and I kind of, like I said, I don't want to label you, but can you take this? Can you
right,
test out here and let me know what you think? And I told her kind of what I thought. And then she said, how did you know? It turned out right. But she said, I don't think I'm any of these things. And she was looking at the negative traits. She's like, I don't
right,
fall into any of this. And I thought, well,
right.
look, I said, look at the positive ones though. Go and look at those. Like there's a lot of positive. But what you really bring out in this book is like every temperament has good and bad. The bad and negative, I guess I could say, is instructive, right? Because, and you kind of talk about that, how we don't really, well, you're already saying it. It's hard to look inward and see, but like to root out our sin. You talked about fear being a part of all of the
Yeah.
negatives in these. That's really interesting. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about
I
that,
do.
but
I'm glad you brought that up. Here's what I do when I'm doing live presentations, just to catch people's attention if they're sleeping or something. And I go, as a matter of fact, nobody in this room has any faults. And then I pause and everybody looks up like, you have no faults, nothing but strengths. I go, but when fear and ego and pride slip in, now your strengths become a weakness. And then I give an example of the person who is lively and chatty, and they come into a room and everybody likes to see them, and they tell a funny story and everybody laughs. And they just bring that sparkle to a group. That's a gift, that's a strength. But if out of their ego and their fear of not being accepted or wanting to be the center of attention too much, their insecurities, they keep talking and telling more jokes and dominating the conversation. Now that strength has moved into a weakness. And so
Mhm.
it's not the temperament. It's the pride, the fear, the ego that shows up through the temperament.
Our fallen humanity, right? Our
Right,
sinfulness, our
right,
propensity, like we
right.
can't escape it. We are so like the more I grow in my faith, the more I am humbled, and because I realize like the weaknesses that I have, like
Right.
even like one of mine is like gluttony. Just I love food, and I used to be a runner, so I was skinny and I ran it all off. Well, now I'm a postmenopausal woman who I can't do that anymore. And it's like, oh, how do I do this? I'm praying like, Lord, help me like appreciate the abundance and the different flavors and all the things that I love about food, but not in excess. Like so anyway, it's like for me, that's a hard one because we have to eat every day, right? And so it's like
Yeah.
I'm constantly reminded of my humanity and how weak I am just through like our daily needs. So
I
it's
know.
always with us.
I told my spiritual director once, I go, the more I advance in my quest toward holiness, the more I realize it's like I have my fallen nature and my sin tendencies are in my DNA. They're like in my bloodstream. And I'll never get rid of them. I will go to my death and thank God for purgatory then. And
Yeah.
I'm not discouraged about it. I'm actually sitting with it and going, okay,
Mm.
Lord, I'm supposed to try for perfection with your help, but I'm likely never ever going to reach it on this side of the veil. And that's okay. I just have to get up every morning and keep trying with your grace.
I'm just going to quickly mention, I don't want to get on a track, but purgatory, I'm just going to say, we've talked about it before on my podcast, but just for those who don't understand it, I'm just going to put it this way. Anyone who's in purgatory is on their way to heaven already. It's just a place that is in scripture where we're being cleansed because to
Yep.
see the beatific vision of God, to look upon his face is so amazing that if there's any residual sin or anything that's still clinging to us, which I'm assuming there's going to be
Right,
for
right,
me,
right.
maybe I'm the
Me
only
too.
one, but I think I won't be perfect, which is such a relief. I think that's what you're describing there. Like
Yeah.
it's a relief to know that we don't have to be perfect. Like God we will be perfected in him.
Right. It's his work. It's his work. And that's a really consolation. And I think I did try to bring this up in the book a few times that, don't kill yourself trying to be holy.
Yeah.
Because he's working with you and through you and in you. And, you're not doing this alone. which is very consoling.
And on the other hand, we can't just let go and say, well, God will take care of it. All I need to do is believe. And I just, you know what I mean? There's got to be some effort on our part, I guess. And so maybe this is a good time then to kind of start going into, I don't know how you want to approach it, because, you know, the first part of your book is really just setting up what the temperaments are. And some people might have some idea of it and others might not have a lot of ideas. So why don't you do your instruction now on what those 4 temperaments are? And one of the things I found really interesting and helpful too is that while these are things that we can work on as far as the negative parts of it, these are innate. This is innate. This is who we are at our essence. We came out as babies and before we were born with these temperaments. And so I don't know, there's something consoling about that, because it's like I can kind of sit in that and go, okay, like this is how God made me and I can work with it. If I know about it, if I'm informed of what it is. And I think we can offer grace to our fellow brothers and sisters so much more when we know who they are.
Well, you know, I think one of my struggles is I'm Irish and I got this white skin with freckles, and I laid out in the sun when I was all young, and now I have skin cancer everywhere, you know? And it's like I was born with this Irish white skin that's real sensitive to the sun. And so I had to learn to accept that reality and work with that sunscreen and all that other stuff. Other people with a lot of melanin in there, you know, they were born a different way and they could be baking all day long and it doesn't bother them. So this is, when you say innate, it's something that God did intend to hardwire into us. Our temperaments are our hardwiring reactions and impressions to the world around us. Do we react quickly or slowly and carefully? Are our reactions and impressions, are they long lasting, or do we move on? You know, do we forget and, you know, just keep going? So personality is different. Personality is your temperament and all your psychological and emotional and intellectual aspects all together, like where the culture that you came from, the, you know, if you're a boomer or you're Gen X or whatever you are, all those things affect your personality. Temperaments is just one part of that. That's your hard wiring. Mm-hmm. So this was discovered and written down 350 years before Jesus was even born by the brilliant Greeks. Those guys were so smart. And Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, noticed that when his patients came to the hospital, he was a doctor and a philosopher, that stripped of all their pretenses and all their occupations and just at their worst when they're sick and, you know, and they're just who they are, he saw 4 consistent patterns of behavior, human behavior. And he goes, wow, there's got to be something to this. And so he labeled them after body fluids because that's where he thought they came from. He knew they were innate. He knew they were tied to our whole person and our, you know, and our body. So that's where we get these, you know, sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, and melancholy. And over the years, when other people have taken this truth and, you know, given it a new twist, they've given it animal names or color names or, but it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's the same basic truth about our human nature. And he discovered that there were 2 natural introverts and 2 natural extroverts. And that nobody was just one, everybody was a combination of 2 of these, and the other 2 were your opposites, your complementary opposites. So the sanguine and the choleric are the 2 natural extroverts. And the way I like to say, they're both people-oriented, they're both high energy, they're both outgoing, they're both, you know, fun. They're both chatty. They're both engaging. But the sanguine is about people and the relationships, and the choleric is about the work and the production. So you can take a sanguine and a choleric and put them in the room, and they kind of look similar and they act similar. They're both working the room. But the sanguine will go off and start chitty-chatting with somebody about the, you know, what's going to go on at the vacation thing next week. And the choleric is like, slips into like, hang on, we got work to do here. You know, get moving. Let's get back to work. So there is a difference between those two extroverts. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then the two introverts are the phlegmatic and the melancholy. And they are also, they can be very extroverted. They can be very chatty and take charge and, loud and energetic, but they wait first. That's the difference between the introverts and the extroverts. The introverts move in slowly and carefully and scan the room, check it out, get the temperature of what's going on, figure it all out. And when they feel safe and comfortable and they're in a familiar environment, then they can look just like an extrovert. They can yell and scream and be bossy and work hard and take charge. And I'll just disclose right now, I'm a double extrovert. I'm the sanguine choleric, and I don't have a soft, quiet, tender, introverted part in me. And I always used to look at introverts and go, "What's wrong with them? They're so slow. That why don't they speak up? Well, get moving. What's wrong with you guys?" And it wasn't until I started looking at my own life and how miserably I'd failed in so many areas, and I realized because I move too quickly, I act rashly. I jump in before thinking things thoroughly and carefully. And I began to look around me and see that the introverts were way smarter than I was in a lot of ways because they were naturally wired to come in slowly and carefully and check things out first. And so that was the beginning, especially as I, rediscovered the temperaments of saying, "Oh Lord, I do have weaknesses and I am arrogant and I am prideful about this. And I don't want to be that anymore." So the phlegmatic is peaceful, kind, stable, supportive, adaptable. They're your best friend. They're your wingman. And it doesn't mean they can't be in charge and be energetic. It means that they will defer naturally and beautifully to you first. And then if somebody else, if they need a leader, if they need a high energy person, the phlegmatic will become that. They can do that. But they don't have to do it. The melancholy, last but not least, the other introvert, also slow and careful and deliberate, but also much more in touch with their depth. All of us are deep. All of us are complex. We're human persons made in God's image, right? But the melancholy is really in touch with the depth and the complexity of life. They are genius prone, mathematical, musical, creative, talented. They're sensitive, they're loving, they're intuitive, and they're just wonderful. But they tend to worry. They tend to get stuck. The two introverts can get overwhelmed, and the extroverts don't get overwhelmed. But sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not good. So hopefully your listeners will begin, if they don't already understand these four, to see that nobody's superior, nobody's better. It's just at different times and places, one will have a natural strength that works better.
So I'm going to jump in. I'm dying to jump in. And so I'm going to tell you, I shared some notes and kind of hinted at this before this, and you said you wanted to hear about it. So I was reading your book. We were on our way to Minneapolis for my husband's birthday this last weekend. And so normally I probably would be in a corner somewhere reading this, but instead I was in the car with my husband and then our two youngest sons who are 20 and 22. So all of a sudden, I started reading about one of the characteristics, one of the temperaments, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds just like this one son. I have to read this. Like he's right there. He's attentive. He's not plugged in." And so I start reading it and it's like, oh yeah, that's me. And then we're like, okay, well, what are the other ones? My husband wanted, and so all of a sudden, like I'm reading all these things and I'm like, I know I'm this. And so I start reading that. And then my husband's like, oh, I don't know about that, and starting to like criticize. I don't think so. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. And then my son's like, yeah, but that's not really you, blah, 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 and I felt kind of deflated because I kind of know who I am. And I'm like, so it got kind of a little bit tense there. And so, I said, just a minute now. I'm not done with, reading all of these and stuff. And there's more to it. And we have a secondary one that figures into this, So,
Right.
so, and then later I ended up, taking the test and everything. And by then we were separated. They had gone one way, I had gone the other way. They were on to another journey. And so, but I was still having this conversation with them as the days went on. And like I sent them, here's the results of my test, just so you know, I am what I thought I was, but you're also right about this because I'm also this. And so anyway, I was like, so you're not wrong. It's just that that's my secondary. So now having said that, Rose, I know you're so perceptive and you're so in tune, and I know it's not fair to put this on you right now, but I'm going to ask you, the expert, based on the little that you know and the little we've talked and shared notes, what do you think my primary and secondary are? What would your guess be?
I'm really glad you asked that, because here's what I've learned the hard way. To jump in too quickly and too excited and too rashly and slap a label on somebody can be very damaging. And as exciting as I am, and I would love to do that, I don't know enough about you. And here's the other thing I've learned. In a certain environment, in this environment, you may be functioning one way, I may be functioning one way, but in another environment, I would see more of you and be around you. And I'm hang on here. So, I've mislabeled people before, and I've actually when I first took the test, I came out melancholy because my mother was a beautiful melancholy. My father had some melancholy. Most of my siblings were melancholy, and I wanted to please my mother. I wanted to be like my mother. And so all my life I had tried to be like she was. And so I naturally identified, oh, I'm this, because I loved it and I tried to be like that. But I wasn't. And that was a big shock to me. I was a sanguine, and the sanguine, here's what I thought was flighty, fickle, shallow, goofy, silly, weak. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be sanguine. But then, it's a self-discovery thing. And I even mislabeled one of my kids because my ego got in the way. So what I am going to tell you is that you have one part of you that's an introvert. What do you think? I'm not listening?
Yes. And in fact, that was the whole thing, because I used to think I was an extrovert.
Yes.
And since I became a writer and I was a mother of 5 kids, I would have to hide away to get my projects done. And I remember I went to this Benedictine, this is where I first discovered it, like years ago, that I wasn't an extrovert. I went to this convent, and they would like, the nuns would want to like talk to me and like, come and be with us. And what are you working on? And I'm like, can I just be alone? Can I just go?
Right.
Like, I came here to get away. And I'm like, oh. And then I was realizing I'm an introvert like all this time. But my husband is a deep introvert, and we had different lives. See, the thing is, I was home with my kids,
Right.
and so I needed to get out. And so he's like, well, you're an extrovert because you're always going to all these places. I'm like, I'm home all day with little kids. Like, I still need stimulation, but then there is that extroverted side of me, so that I've had other friends say, you're not introverted, but I am. Like, that's actually my primary. I'm melancholy. I'm sorry, I gave it away.
No, this is really good, because this is a real important discussion. This can be a fun thing that you take online, but I see a lot of people get it wrong. I hate to say that, but it's because we do go too fast. We don't understand the nuances. And here's the thing. All men are visual and simple. Okay. And all women are complex and emotional. That's not true. That's an oversimplification. I know a lot of women who are fix-its and, like to fix things like men, and a lot of men that are not like that. So to simplify things, we've reduced, it's a reductionist view of it. Introverts are not shy, retiring, hiding away, cowering in the corner, afraid to go to parties. No. Introverts can be excited, go out and do fun things, hang glide on vacation, say woo, 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 but they do it and then they go and take a nap, and they wait first. They don't rush into it like other people. So
Yeah.
introverts are not slugs, you know?
Yeah. And I was trying to explain to my son and my husband, like I said, no, but you don't know my interior life like I do. I know like the kind of energy I know that I need to go into a quiet corner. Like that is where I thrive. That's where I get my energy back. But now you can probably guess what my secondary is. I'm thinking, and if not, I can tell you. But it's a more
Well,
extroverted quality.
well, okay. So here's what I heard you say. I wrote it down when we first got on here. You said you had made a mistake in your prior podcast thing, and that your producer was helping you, and you were terrified of making that same mistake. And I go, oh, terrified. That's a pretty extreme. That's a melancholy world. This
Yeah.
melancholies are dramatic. They like to go to the stage. Most actors, Shakespearean actors, and most actors and actresses are melancholy. They love drama. They're good actors, and they sing and they dance and they do all that stuff. So, and then you said something about if something was very stressful to you. I go, oh God, she's got a sweet little introverted side here,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is beautiful. That means that you're also deep, self sacrificing, compassionate, loving. The melancholy of all four, I know, and I found this to be true, is the first one to go to the cross for somebody they love. And that's a beautiful trait of the melancholy that I don't have by nature. I would be like St. Peter. I would run. I'd run for the hills. I know it. I admit it. I ask God for mercy. You would be hanging on there with Jesus. I respect that about the melancholy. Okay.
You actually made me tear up just now.
Your secondary, I don't think you're choleric. I think you have the capacity to be flexible and adaptable. You're the mother of 5 kids. You have to be in charge. You have to get things going. You have to be organized. You have to make things work. You're the boss. You're in charge. But from your voice and I watched you on some videos on YouTube, and I am a choleric, and I don't think you're choleric.
Interesting, because that is what I come out as for my secondary, unless I answered wrong.
No, okay, that's what I'm saying. I don't, and here's the thing: you know your interior life, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that I don't know your interior life, and I haven't been around you, so that's why I try to qualify it. But I've been doing this for 35 years, and I am a choleric, and I know my own.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the one thing, and I did put it in the book. Cholerics, extroverts, cholerics and the sanguines are rare. These 4 temperaments are not evenly spread throughout the population. Because think about it. Even in the animal kingdom, when you have a bunch of lions and everything, there's only 1 or 2 that are the alpha males.
Mm-hmm.
There's usually a few leaders, and the other ones are the supportive tribe. So we're just going to leave it at that, right?
Yeah. Well, the choleric made sense in that my son and my husband were like, my son was like, you're way more extroverted. You do these things and those things and stuff. So it does kind of make sense that my introversion would be paired with something extroverted.
Well,
that's what it's come out at when I test. But
okay,
what would be your theory?
Okay, but hang on.
Yeah.
That would be an ambivert, that part introvert, part extrovert. Okay, and that would be a choleric melancholy or a sanguine phlegmatic. Okay, but most people are a double introvert. The majority of population are the melancholy phlegmatics. And with maturity and experience and age and wisdom and all that stuff, a phlegmatic can be strong, take charge, capable, steady, and engaged, involved, out there. I have some of my beautiful women friends who are beautiful melancholy phlegmatics. They're double introverts, but they're not shy, quiet, or retiring, and they do more things than I do. So that's the other thing I put in the book. We have to be very careful about cherry picking. Like your husband said, you like to go out all the time to places. Well, that's to reduce an extrovert to that one thing is too reductionist.
Right. Or even to use the personality, but you're outgoing. Well, yeah, but I used to, when I was little, I was super shy and hid behind my mom's legs. Like I remember people saying, "Oh, she's so shy." And I was like, "Don't talk to me. Don't tell me I'm shy."
Well,
You know?
okay, so here's the other thing. And this is what I said, and I'm so glad you're bringing this up and that we have a long time to talk about it.
Yeah.
And also the interviews I have are like 5 or 10 minutes, which is ridiculous. But anyway, introverts are extroverted. Let me just say that again. Introverts can be extroverted and they love to be extroverted. They just wait until the time or the place or the situation is right for them. Then you can't tell the difference.
hmm
So,
I've said that to so many people before
right.
I read this, even because they were like, "You're not." Just yesterday, I actually texted someone I'm going to go see. It's a cousin that I'm going to spend some time with when I'm in Wisconsin next week. And I said, "I just want you to know the day that we're together, I probably can't fit a lot in because I'm going to be coming off of this big event and I need my downtime." And she's like, because I said my introversion side is going to need a rest. Like, I know that about
Right,
myself.
right,
And she's
right,
like,
right.
"What? I would have never guessed that. I'd never guessed an introvert." And people actually have challenged me, like, "You're not an introvert." So thank you. You've relieved me and
Right.
just settled my
No,
soul a little bit.
no, right, right, right. Okay, again, because they've just categorized introvert is shy and doesn't
hmm
say anything.
Right.
That come on, people.
I say
You know,
plenty.
yes, yes, and you have a natural energy to you and a lightness to you, and that's another thing. Somebody tells me a lot all the time. Oh, I'm sanguine because I like to go to parties. I go, we all like to go to parties.
Exactly.
Some
It just
need
depends on
early.
which party.
Right, right, right. And here's the thing: the older I get, and the more tired I get, and like you say, the post-menopausal thing. I don't want to go. I've been to so many parties in my life. I am a sanguine, and I don't like to go to parties. Isn't that funny?
hmm hmm
So it's just you have to look at the whole thing.
Yeah.
And anyway, I love it. Thank you for being so open about this too.
Yeah, and I don't want to just obsess over my temperament, so I'm fine moving on. But it is really interesting, and I think the situation that I've described to you does kind of help us get into like the complexities of it. At the same
Yes,
time, it is much more simpler than a lot of the personality tests, which have 16 different categories and,
yes,
just like exponentially crazy as you get into it.
yes,
So this one's different. There's really a main one and a secondary, and the secondary is very instructive, right? It can help us understand someone even more, but that's as far as it goes. We're not tertiary, and we just
no,
have.
right. We don't have an angel wing here and and a numerical thing here, and the whole. Thank God bless the Myers Briggs thing,
Mhm.
ESTG. But it's like I've taken that test over the years, and that keeps changing.
Right. Yeah.
Because those aren't temperaments; those are just traits. They've just lumped traits together, like introvert, extrovert, thinking, feeling, and so it's really a whole different game. It's not a personality. Well, we have to be careful about our terms, and that's why I try to use temperament as different than personality, because your personality
Yeah.
can change. Your personality can change, especially when you're depressed. You do not have the same personality you had when you weren't depressed,
Mm-hmm.
but temperament
Absolutely.
doesn't
Absolutely.
change. Right, right.
Yeah. So what you did with this book, which I have shared before that I really love. I mean, it's my type of holiness, striving for sainthood with the temperament God gave me. I saw this like on Facebook and I'm like, I got to get this book and I want to interview you because
Oh,
I just love that concept. So share about the part of the book where once we kind of start looking at the four different temperaments, how we can refine ourselves in our spiritual life and use the temperaments and the innate aspects of us that God gave us and refine ourselves through a long journey called life. But how can this instruct us, Rose, in our holiness, on our path to holiness?
okay. Well, Remember
Did I
that.
just jump way ahead?
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, 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 no. It's just
Okay.
no. There's so much beautiful
Yeah.
stuff about this. The temperaments, we identify them by outward responses or attitudes, right? But behind them is a thinking. Behind each of the temperament is a belief system. So let's just say the two introverts are come into the world, and they naturally are hardwired to believe that the world might not be safe until I check it out first. So there's a
Mhm.
belief behind the introversion, and that makes them careful. And that's a virtue. That makes them thoughtful. That's a virtue. So it's understanding the temperaments and then understanding the belief system reveals some of the wrong thinking that we have. And I love this. When Jesus died on the cross, he washed away my sins, but he didn't wash away my mind. And holiness is about transformation. And St. Paul said, if you want to be transformed, you have to renew your mind. Remember that from Romans 12. So first I needed to find out, well, what's in my mind? Like, I said when I was young, what's in there? If I need to transform myself to be holy and to be pleasing before God, I need to know what is in there. So knowing your natural predispositions and the beliefs behind them is crucial. What makes you do? What makes you do that? What makes you do what you don't want to do? What makes you not do what you want to do? Remember, that was another St. Paul complaint in Romans 7. I don't do the things I really want to do. Why is that? And that's because he had a belief system in there conflicting, with the
Mm.
good, true, and the beautiful. That's part of our fallen nature. And it really comes down to our temperaments. So I say
Mm.
that once you know your temperaments, and once you begin to understand what your thinking is behind your temperament, you can begin to discover the stuff that needs to be cleared away. And I say that holiness takes three things: lots of God's grace, lots of hard work, and lots of time. Lots of God's grace, lots of hard work, and lots of time.
So there is an interplay. Like there's our innate self with these
Uh-huh.
temperaments, but then the belief system is something that isn't innate, right?
Yes, it is. It is innate because
Oh,
it's
okay.
tied to the temperament. So, okay, so
Okay.
if you're a phlegmatic or a melancholy, and that you're an introvert, you were born with an attitude that when you're in a room and somebody walks in, it's like, who is this?
Mhm.
What is that? Am I safe?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Extroverts don't think that by nature. They have to learn to think that way. When somebody walks in the room, the extroverts go, "Hi, who are you? Come over here." It could be a rapist or a serial killer,
Mm.
right? The extrovert
Mhm.
doesn't even know because they're just naturally open and eager to move forward. And again, that can be a virtue or a vice. So, what are we thinking?
Mm.
Do Here's the sanguine, and I'll just tell the weaknesses of the sanguine. The sanguine just wants everybody to look at her, see her, love her, adore her, clap for her, want more of her, fawn over her. And I'm
Mm.
exaggerating for an effect, but she just wants to be loved and adored. Okay. The opposite, melancholy, also wants to be seen and loved and adored, but more deeply wants to be understood. As
Mhm.
a sanguine, I don't care if people understand me. I just want them to like me.
And I care. That's why we had that argument in the car. Like, you don't get it.
See?
You don't understand me.
See? Okay,
I know.
exactly. And that's the strength of so your belief system, Roxanne, is I will be safe, I will be happy if people understand me.
100%. And that's why
Okay.
I'm a writer.
Right, right, right. So when people don't understand you, you lose some of your serenity.
Mhm.
And that's because there's a fear attached to, if I don't have that understanding, I won't be safe who will I be, and all that existential stuff. And that's going into the interior life, where you can examine that, and the Lord can come in there with you and help you change the way you think. I don't need to be understood. I want to be understood, but I don't need to be understood,
Yeah.
because the one who knows me, who loves me, who gets every part of me, as deep as it is our Lord. And that's all I really need.
There's one other aspect that is connecting with what you're saying right now, and it is this. In 2020, I thought I had a pretty robust faith life. And I realized really quickly that I didn't trust God because the world was falling apart and I didn't know if he was going to be around. I was like, where are you? Like, what are you doing? Like, the world is crashing right now and where are you? I don't
Right.
feel you. And I realized it was a crisis in trust. And I had to go deep into trying to get, and I found the surrender.
The
Jesus, I
surrender
surrender.
novena? Yeah.
Well, the surrender novena was first, and then the litany of trust.
Oh, yeah.
Patty introduced me to the surrender novena, and that was huge. So that was my first. That was the entry point. And my husband also is a melancholic, and we both have that skepticism in us, and kind of like that not sure about things. And so that was huge. He went through 2 open heart surgeries with the surrender novena on his lips, and trust me, it brought him to a beautiful place, especially after the second time. But then I needed more. Because that was before 2020. I realized I thought I got the trust thing. I think I even gave a talk on it. But in that moment, that was tested, and I realized I didn't know if I trusted God, which was really like pivotal.
Humbling.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I felt so naked. Yeah.
I did the same thing, and I've been speaking and writing for decades now. And about 10 years ago, same thing, went through a crisis, and I go, OMG, I don't trust you.
Uh-huh.
But here's what I learned. Do you know IFS, internal family systems? Yeah.
Not really.
Okay. I'm going to turn you on to that later. But
Okay.
anyway, good Catholic psychologists are helping us understand. Even St. Paul said, you have parts inside you that are in conflict. And when you begin to understand how those parts operate, you can get some healing in there. But anyway, I realize, and I think this is true of you, Roxanne, you have a part that does trust God, and you have a part that doesn't trust God. Would that be true?
Yes.
Okay, me too. And I go, that's what I thought. So I was consoled that, okay, part of me really does trust you, but I got this part that's holding out, and help that part of me let go of the fear and learn to trust you. And I'm an
Yeah.
extrovert. We're not afraid of anything, right? Well, that's too reductionist. It's too reductionist to limit the temperaments to that. We struggle with faith. We struggle with trust.
You at the back of the book gave some resources, and this. If anyone is in this situation, I would recommend the Jesus I Trust in You. It's the litany of trust, which I think you add in the back of the book, the litany of trust.
Did. It's from the System of Life, right?
Yes. Yeah. She writes, and I interviewed her on the radio, and that book was huge. And I'm in a group right now that we're going through it this summer, just chapter by chapter, but each line of the litany is a chapter, and she does a beautiful job. I really feel like this was, it's great. It has like 5-star reviews too. Because I think the litany itself was inspired, and I think the book just goes into it more deeply, and she intersperses personal stories and scripture, and they're short. Yeah, it's a beautiful book. So if anyone's struggling with trust, go to that. It's Sister Faustina Maria Pia who wrote it, and it's just beautiful. So anyway, that's kind of a side note there. But I think this is a good time, I think, then to take a little bit of a break, Rose. We'll take a short break, but we'll be back because I know there's so much more to discuss. So we'll be back with Matters of Soul Importance after this little break.
Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
We're back with Matters of Soul Importance. This has been, as I knew it would be, a very intriguing discussion. I hope that you are getting something out of it and intrigued, and also will possibly get the book because it goes into so much more detail. And I think it really is helpful. Are we on our way to heaven? And is there a way we can increase our, chances of ending up in eternity with our Lord? And so it's not about works. But works are part of our ascent to heaven too, as far as works in terms of actions of things we can do to improve ourselves. So Rose Sweet is here, and we're sharing about how that all works and the 4 temperaments that were brought to light in the year 350 BC. I mean, this has been with us for a long time, and really humanity doesn't change that much. We think we're enlightened, but we're really not. Rose, one of the questions I had is, and I really wanted to ask this. So my husband and I, early on in our relationship, we realized there were some struggles. Some part of it was because we were so much alike, and we knew that going into it. But it was also a positive because we were so passionate about things, and we're both musicians, and there were, he has a huge heart, and hopefully I do too. And so those melancholy, attributes drew us together, but they also made life really hard when we tried to merge our lives together because we would have similar responses to things. We didn't complement each other. And I have, for example, I have a daughter who's married to someone that is a very much a complementary partner. And I kind of envy that a little bit because it's like, they complement each other so well, and we don't. But at the same time, we've made it through, and we're doing really well. but we, even just in talking about this book, we've kind of come back to like, yeah, it can be hard at times, and this is why. So tell me about that, because I was kind of looking in your book, like, could I find out like which are the best, partners? Like melancholy, can a melancholy and a melancholy stay married? Because I mean, we've made it 30 some years, but there was a few years in there that it got tough. So yeah, share a little bit about like those combinations and how we can kind of look at those.
Oh, okay. So do we have 2 more hours? Because
Yeah, I know.
I love to talk about this. Okay. Here are some basic principles. There is no perfect temperament for you to marry. There's not one that's better than another. The person who you marry that's the best for you is the one that's most integrated in their interior life, most mature, and that means they know how to love. They really know how to properly love another person. So when 2 melancholies, here's the thing, you don't have to complement each other by being an opposite. 2 melancholies not getting along is an insecurity problem somewhere. It's not the temperament. It'll show up in stubbornness and willfulness. The melancholies are not very yielding, right?
Mm-hmm.
The sanguine, who is the opposite, if you were married to a sanguine, he would yield all the time to keep you happy and to make you laugh and everything. But that would bother you because he wouldn't stick to his principles.
Right.
So the good thing about the fact that maybe the 2 of you aren't yielding, the good flip side to that is you're both intense and dedicated to not changing what you believe is right and true and good. The problem is somebody is wrong and they don't realize it. And that's in every marriage.
Right.
So,
yeah.
it comes, all this stuff that's really going on, this ego stuff and fear and pride and everything, it shows up through the temperaments as stonewalling or crushing or all the different ways. So let's just talk about that. A melancholy and a sanguine in a marriage, if somebody's part melancholy and sanguine, that was my husband and me. And I don't know if my husband passed away just earlier this year. And he was so melancholy. Oh God. And I was so drawn to him because he was creative and zany and and dramatic and artistic and creative. And he played the guitar and he sang and he did cartoon voices, and he was just so interesting and fascinating to me. And man, was he stubborn. And he was a perfectionist. And melancholies do like perfection. And they, and the truth is important to them, but things being right and
Yeah.
valid and confirmed are really important to the melancholy.
Mm-hmm.
The sanguine could care less. So what?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm being glib here and over exaggerating. So I would throw the silverware after they're clean, threw them in the drawer. The spoons were in the spoon thing, but they weren't all lined up. And I'd come in later and I'd notice that they're all perfectly lined up. And that would bother me because I felt like he was criticizing me, that I had done it sloppily. He had to come behind me and make it perfect. And he didn't say anything, but I got the message. But I was wrong. He wasn't doing it to show me how wrong I did it. He just needed that perfection. It was a little thing that bothered him, and he wanted to fix it, and he did. But I, in my shame and my fear of him being mad at me or not liking me enough or whatever, I got to have my husband's perfect love all the time, right? I misread it. So again, the problem wasn't the temperament. It was insecurity and fear, but it showed up through the temperaments. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but then now I have all these questions because my husband is more like that, like lining things up, and I'm not as much like that in like the house, for example.
Right.
I have order. I definitely have to have order, but I don't do the dishes. I don't put the dishes right in the dishwasher. Like
Right.
you even put that in the book. I don't do that. I have layers. There's this layer and then that layer. And then like I have those little file cabinets. I was telling someone the other day before I even read that in your book, like we have these folders in our head. Right. Everything has a little place, but I'm not the scrupulous one in that way. So what does that mean?
Well, okay. So there's a lot of different things, but here's the thing. Do you ever procrastinate?
Yeah, but I like to have my deadlines. I like to beat my deadlines too. So
okay. so I don't know. I don't know.
I'm kind of confusing. I am confusing. Like even when I take tests, I'm kind of down the middle a lot.
Okay, so I'm just going to say, I'm going to take a risk and say this because you do have a good heart. I can already tell that. That I do know. I think you might be phlegmatic. I think the phlegmatic is adaptable as all get out. They are they're engaged. They're fluid. They're supportive, and but they have a lightness that they want things in order, but it doesn't have to be perfect because it's just too energy draining to be that perfect.
Mm-hmm. To be honest, I love that. I took like 4 different tests and I was something different every time. That's why I'm like, okay, this is crazy. And
Okay,
I did show up as phlegmatic in one of them. And I, the whole thing started when I was identifying my phlegmatic son, who is high phlegmatic. And he is just the greatest. So he's so easy to get along with and whatever. So if I can have a little bit of that in me, I'm happy, not offended at all.
okay. You know what? Okay, and here's what you're describing, and that most people who are all over the place when they take my temperament test and they've scored all over all 4, that tells me they're a phlegmatic because they look at that, go, I can be that, I am that. Yes, that's me. Because you're so adaptable and they're so capable of just being what is needed. And the other ones tend to be a little too rigid.
Interesting.
And that adaptability is really beautiful. And I love that you just clarified high phlegmatic. I should have put that in my book.
Well, he's like textbook. That's why I had to say something. I'm like, I think I'm reading about my son right now, the one that's right here in the car. And he agreed. Like he did.
Okay. So yes. So remember, somebody. Okay. So let's say he's phlegmatic melancholy. He could be 75% phlegmatic. So he's high on the phlegmatic scale, and with some melancholy in there. But what if somebody else is 50-50? or more melancholy and just a little phlegmatic. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're onto something there. Here's the thing. Everybody's going to have problems in their marriage. That's just given. The first year or two is going to be wonderful. The next few years are going to be difficult. And if you can get through that thing, you got some chances. We all know that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Opposites don't always attract. I know a lot of people who had a super choleric, harsh parent, and that's the last person that they wanted to marry. So they married another introvert. They married someone like them because they're more comfortable, they're safer, and it's calmer. So I talked about trauma in the book a little bit. We don't need to go off on that, but
Mm-hmm.
how you experienced overblown and out of control temperaments in your childhood, your previous life, before you get married, may affect who you decide to marry.
Yeah, absolutely. When I met my husband, I'm like, I met myself. I mean, this is so comfortable.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
100%.
Right.
And it was great. It was great until it became a problem.
I know,
So,
but it's not the temperament. It's not the temperament.
no,
It's
yeah,
something
you're
else.
right.
Right.
And one
Right.
of the things I wanted to mention about that too, as far as moving through that, someone had to be right, someone had to be wrong. I went into some deep like psychotherapy, different things to heal. And I started changing how I was reacting because I realized someone's got to change here. Someone's got to do a different reaction. And that really was a turning point once I could kind of get control of my wild emotions and not add to the fire. Now it's a much calmer household. But we have our moments, but for the
Right.
most part, it's much calmer. And our faith, of course, is growing and informing that and helping us be better versions of ourselves.
Good for you. That's a beautiful response, Roxanne, on your part to God's grace, moving you to go deep and to make those changes to bring harmony and peace. That's just very admirable and very beautiful. And all four temperaments can do that.
Yeah. And that's what's your book is very generous in that way, in terms of letting people know that there's no bad one. There's
Right.
no
Right.
temperament that, like they're all filled with good, and it is the way God made us. I love kind of getting back to the saints, I loved that part of it because, those are our role models. And if our role models can have maybe even some of the temperaments that, or the aspects of temperaments that we're not sure we like, to think of them having achieved holiness and communion with
Okay.
God is so hopeful.
So you just talked about parenting and your book, What Would Monica Do? Now, this is what's coming to me. Let's look at Saint Monica. She's a parent of a wayward, rebellious son, and she's terrified for his soul, right? So, I don't know what her temperament was, but it could be if she was an extrovert, she toned it down. But anyway, she went into prayer. She went into slow, steady, consistent, stable prayer for her son. We don't know, but we don't hear stories of her haranguing him and lecturing him and being on him like an extrovert would be. Come on, move, change. You're going to hell. Read this book. We just saw her on her knees quietly, as the introverts are naturally wired to do, to go into deep prayer. So there's a beautiful thing as parenting. The introverted types will tend to hold off and not cause conflict when let's say there's conflict with the kids. The introverted parent doesn't want to deal with that, and they tend to let it build, and then they blow. That's just a natural, typical thing.
We get overwhelmed.
But you start out gentle and kind and loving and instructive, and then when little Billy isn't listening, finally you want to rip his head off, right? Okay, the extroverts. The minute little Billy says anything wrong, we want to rip their head off. We're not gentle or kind at all, And again, I'm over exaggerating to create a point.
Right.
But parenting is, you have to know your natural disposition. And if I am a parent, and I am a parent to a phlegmatic son, I have to lower my voice. I have to slow it down. And when I talk to him, I have to ask him questions and listen first because he's phlegmatic melancholy. He wants to be understood, not lectured to. I have a choleric son, though. I can go, "Hey, stop that," and I can just yell at him, and he yells back. But it's light and it's quick, and we understand each other. So I have to parent them differently. I love them the same, but I parent them differently.
That's so interesting. I'm thinking about my 5 kids, and my melancholics, because of their
Sensitivity,
well, yeah, maybe that's it. But sometimes they're also more reactive than my phlegmatic, and I feel,
drama.
yeah. So I have to approach, like, I feel like here's my thought, and it almost seems opposite, but I don't think it is of what you're saying. My phlegmatic, I feel like I can be more pointed to him and more. I know he's not going to freak out.
Right.
So I can kind of go deeper with things and challenge him a little bit more in ways I can't with my others.
Right. So you're recognizing, and that's due to his temperament. So you're recognizing the way he receives you, the way he receives life, the way he responds is different. And you want to meet that to get into his heart. One of the problems I see is, the majority of people are a combination of phlegmatic and melancholy. So when you have a sanguine in your family, and it's kind of rare, or, people can act sanguine, but that doesn't mean they really are sanguine. The sanguine just wants your loving gaze and a big smile and to tell them how cute and wonderful and adorable they are. Even when you just are so mad at what they just did. So the melancholy parent will tend to withhold affection until any of the children repent or are, compliant or worthy. And that's a way that a melancholy can tend to control is withholding of affection. They pull it back. But that's the one thing the sanguine needs to feel safe and then to respond in repentance and obedience, to know that parent loves them. And there are a lot of parents out there who withhold affection because they think that's going to help the child come to them. And what it does is it really wounds them.
What else do we want to say about this book, and maybe in terms of shifting it to the holiness aspect? And again, you're so gentle with this. Like, you're not saying we need to be perfect, it's something more than that. But what can we siphon from this particular perspective of looking at our temperaments, which is a very, spiritual way of looking at it?
I think people will go deeper with it and be open to what God wants to do in their hearts with it if they first get over the fear of having a label or an identity in this process, because that doesn't limit you. It's really meant to free you. But we all, we're all so wounded. We live in a broken world. I don't know. This brought me tremendous freedom, even though I had angst and anxiety and shame at the beginning. I wanted to plow through because something spoke to my heart. I want to be who God made me to be. I want to own it and accept it and thrive and flourish in it. And with His grace, I have. And that's what I want for all the readers. That's what I want for everybody.
And it begins there, and then it extends out to all the other people we confront, right? And obviously we have to be so careful, like you were saying, not to label and figure everyone out. But if we can have some idea of who they are, there's so much grace we can extend to people. And wow, what a beautiful thing that is. Like, God wants that. He wants to spread grace. Yeah.
It really is. I know there was one woman who was extremely traumatized, and people were surrounding her going, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's going on? What can you do? What can we do to help you?" And she was just shut down. She was a overwhelmed phlegmatic melancholy and trauma, right? And here comes this slow, quiet man, came up and gently touched her and said, "How are you? What can I do for you?" And she turned her face to him in response. He knew how to speak to her. He knew how to love her. he knew how to reach her because of her temperament. And all the other people were yelling, screaming. They were responding in their own, out of their own temperament, not into hers, not into hers.
Right.
So
Right.
you're right. It is about, once we get ourselves under control here, then our mission is to take this out into all of our relationships and learn how to love more beautifully, more completely.
And one of the things you were just saying there too, like to have grace for those who didn't get it, to have grace for those who did, because people will let us down, and people's temperaments are not always going to accommodate ours. And so I think just knowing that God knows who we are, and he has the answer for how we're going to meet with him someday in heaven. So to come back to that too, but to give grace to those who don't always respond to ourselves, our temperaments, our personalities the way we wish they would. So
yeah, exactly.
Rose, who's your favorite saint? Tell us about your favorite saint and why and what their temperament is.
I love St. Peter because he swore his allegiance. He was a sanguine choleric. Sanguines are about the grand gesture that they don't even stop to think, can I back this up? And he gave grand gestures to the Lord, and he professed his love, and then he ran away like a coward, and then he wept. And in his anger, he chopped a guy's ear off. I've felt like that many times, trust me. So just looking at St. Peter, I adore him. I love him. I relate to him, and I pray to him every day. So he's my favorite saint. And I love St. Teresa of Avila, but I think St. Peter, you asked me that, his mind, he came to my mind right away.
He's very real. Yeah.
Who's your favorite saint?
Well, one that I really like is Saint Edith Stein. And, she was the writer, she was the truth seeker, and she was the peace, in the midst of this chaos. I couldn't be that. I have a little bit too much of the drama in me, but I admire that so much about her. She was like an angel in the midst of a horrific situation. And so she's one of my favorites for sure. And there's others, but so I want to circle back, as I try to do always at the end, and just ask that main question, which we've kind of answered throughout, but can our temperament affect our holiness? What do you say?
Absolutely, yes. It can help us or hinder us. So it's important to know. But in the end, it's a huge gift. It's a huge gift. And with God's grace, I think I'm inching closer and closer to holiness through my temperament.
Can our temperament affect our holiness? At the end of her book, Rose offers a test to discern where we fall on the temperament continuum. I do hope you'll find the book and read all that precedes the temperament quiz. But if you're super eager to learn your primary temperament, to discover or affirm that you're a peaceful phlegmatic, a courageous choleric, a mysterious melancholy, or a spirited sanguine, I'll include the link to an online test you can take immediately in the show notes. Also, toward the end of the book, Rose sums up the primary need of each of the 4 types. The choleric says, "Please affirm my hard efforts." The sanguine says, "Please love me." The phlegmatic says, "Please be gentle with me." And the melancholy says, "Please understand me." It's no wonder, as a melancholy, that I loved this book so much. I want to be understood, and if pinning down my temperament helps others understand me, I am more at peace. I'm also able to offer more grace to others who might confuse or hurt me with their responses. So it seems a win-win. But I also want to take a cue from Rose, who astutely urged caution. In the book, she mentioned some truths to keep in mind when assessing either our or another's temperament, such as maturity can soften the differences. So while our temperaments are innate, we can refine the negatives as we grow in maturity and in the spiritual life. In addition, often a proper assessment requires careful observation and time, which is why Rose was hesitant to immediately charge in with an assessment of my temperament. And finally, situations can minimize or emphasize one's traits, so we need to be aware of those things. As she wrote, God lovingly poured a part of himself into each of us, and this study clearly credits God as the author and creator, with the 4 temperaments as sharers in and reflections of his nature. As we come to understand the temperaments more deeply, we'll be better able to cooperate with our Lord in the purification and perfection of our own temperament. And in doing so, Rose says, we can gain more insight into God's beauty, identify our natural strengths, rid ourselves of any false guilt or shame about who we are, and develop deeper humility, to name a few of the perks. Well, that pretty much sums up why this topic is of both earthly and eternal consequence. Well, in a couple of weeks, we'll talk with an author from North Dakota whose new book on surrender begs the question, does surrender mean giving up? Until then, don't lose sight of the light.